Sir, you are on the call, sir. Please go ahead.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege to welcome you to this conference call on economy and market outlook on behalf of Geojit. In the backdrop of the ongoing market turmoil and the unprecedented volatility, we thought it would be prudent to get experts share their views directly with investors. We believe that such interaction will go a long way in helping investors to take informed decisions, especially when the uncertainty is at a larger scale than the normal. We have with us today Mr. Prashant Jain, Executive Director and Chief Investment Officer at HDFC Mutual Fund. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome him. Mr. Prashant has nearly 28 years of investment management experience. He holds the distinction of being the only one fund manager in India and one of the few globally to have continuously managed a scheme for over 25 years. HDFC Balanced Advantage Fund, earlier known as HDFC Prudence Fund, is the largest equity fund scheme in India and has delivered a CAGR of 18% since inception in February 1994. Mr. Prashant is a Bachelor of Technology in Mechanical Engineering from IIT Kanpur and holds a management degree from IIM Bangalore. Mr. Prashant, it's always an honor listening to you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ranjit, and a very good afternoon or good evening to all of you, friends, and thank you so much for being in this call. And I'll be speaking most of the time, and most of your questions, a large number of questions have been compiled by the Geojit team, and they have been forwarded to me, and I will endeavor my best to answer all these questions. So let me straight away share with you some thoughts on what is happening and what are our views on this. I think we are dealing with three issues here, and these three issues are: one, the COVID and the lockdown; two, the sharp fall in oil prices; and three, what we have forgotten is the restructuring of the Yes Bank. And I think each of these three issues, while COVID is top of mind, I think each of these three issues has some impact. So let me deal with each of these quickly. I think Yes Bank restructuring is over, and this highlights the importance of liability franchise for banks and financial institutions. And I've always said that asset quality is cyclical, liability franchise takes longer to build. And I think with the restructuring of Yes Bank and the effect of it, I think the smaller banks will find the growth to be slow, and they will have to work hard to rebuild their franchise. The good news to my mind is that to the best of my understanding, I don't see other similar possibilities in the country, because most of the other small banks have much higher levels of capital, and their growth is also a lot more moderate. So I do believe that Yes Bank was an outlier case, and I don't think we are likely to see a repeat of that. There is a related question here that cases like DFHL, Yes Bank, ILFS, that why did mutual fund managers did not foresee this? And I can say for HDFC Fund, while we have made many other mistakes, these were cases where we had no exposure on the fixed income side, not just for 3-5 years, but going back 15-20 years as well. So I think we have been quite prudent, certainly on the fixed income side, but in equities we did have some exposure to Yes Bank, but it was a very small, extremely small exposure. And also the mistakes on the fixed income side by managers have to be seen in the context of overall portfolios. And I think by and large mutual funds have done a reasonable job. If you look at the stress in banks of NPAs, it is far, far higher. It is true that some mutual funds have also experienced stress, but by and large I think our fund has managed to thus far avoid most of such issues. So anyway, coming back to the main issue, and that is COVID and oil. So the lockdown will clearly impact the economy both in India and abroad. The economy is like a wheel with various spokes, and when one person buys a shirt, the shopkeeper earns some money, the salesman earns some money, the taxi driver or the truck driver who brought that shirt to that mall, he earns that money. The spinning mill, the weaving mill, the tailor, the button supplier, the chemical supplier, the dyes, pigments, farmer who grew the cotton. So when economic activity takes place, the income of that is distributed in hundreds of ways. Therefore, when discretionary spending goes down, it will impact wages for a large number of people. When people travel less, when they eat out less, when they buy less, when they go to movies less, when they entertain less, all of this will have meaningful impact on the wages, especially in the service segments of the economy. India is a service-led economy. 60% of the GDP is services, and the 40% of employment is provided by services. So roughly half of the country earns its wages from services, and the challenge in India is that the bottom half of the country, the people in the bottom half of the income pyramid, they have a share of 15% of GDP. So 50% share, 15% of the GDP. That means that the average income of these families is about 25,000 rupees per month. Now, another cultural change that has taken place in India over last 2 to 3 decades is that until 20 years back, 30 years back, even the poorest of the poor used to save something. And when I go back and look, I clearly remember even very poor people, peons or drivers, they would save some money religiously every month. But I think since then a lot has changed, and today we have come away from that culture of savings to an EMI-driven culture. And I think therefore I feel the savings rate in the lower income households in the country has come down quite sharply. And what that means is that if you don't have much savings and there is income, wages being disrupted for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, then it will cause significant pain. I think whenever this lockdown is lifted, the economic activity, life will come back to near normal, but I think the impact on wages is going to be there for some more time. Because please think of a business, please think of a shop, a mall, a multiplex, an airline, a hotel, a restaurant. The break-even point, these businesses have very high fixed costs. And if your sales drops 20%, you may lose 50 or 70% of profits. So I think given the impact on demand in the current year, the impact on profitability will be sharper for many small sectors like retail malls, multiplexes, garment companies, hotels, restaurants, etc. And therefore, these companies will try to save on costs. So I expect meaningful pressure on wages in the country for foreseeable future. And given the fact that the savings are less, and also after the experience of COVID, people will be generally worried about a similar thing repeating again. Hopefully it will not, but that fear will not go away, because this experience for someone with no wages and little savings will be extremely traumatic one. So I think even when wages come back to normal, there will be a tendency to save a little more than what we have done as a society in last 10, 20 years. In China, I am told the millennials have saved for the first time after COVID. So I think certain behavioral changes will also take place, desire to save more, be a little conservative, maintain social distancing, etc. So net, I feel that because of the impact on wages, the uncertainty and this difficult experience, the impact on consumption and wages will be slightly more prolonged even after the lockdown is lifted. So that was one part of it. Now coming to the good news for India is that while economic activity will slow down and there are various estimates of zero growth, -2% growth, +2% growth for the current year, I don't think that is really important. What is good news for India is that oil prices have come down very sharply. And in a way, in a world of COVID, I think it is better to be in India than in most other countries of the world. And makes me explain why we are blessed to be in India. Many of the emerging market countries are large exporters either of oil or of other goods. Now, when the Western economy will experience severe downturn and the oil prices have already collapsed, imagine the status of a country if they are exporting oil or if they are exporting large manufactured goods. Their economy depends on them. The downturn in the GDP is going to be very, very significant. India, fortunately, is an importer of oil, and we are also an importer of consumer discretionary goods. Last year, India imported about $80 billion worth of oil at $65. We imported about $60 billion worth of electronics, and we imported $30 billion worth of gold. So the total imports into the country were 80 plus 90. Now oil prices are down by more than half. Let us assume an average price of $30-35. We save about 40 billion. Electronic imports, I am sure, in this environment, people will refrain from buying a new handset or a new mobile phone. They will make the existing ones work longer. So I think it is reasonable to assume a 30-40% drop in mobile handsets. In any case, for 2 months there has been a shutdown practically. Gold imports, I think, will also drop. So I feel net India stands to save maybe about close to, and other imports would also degrow at least 10%. So India, between these 3-4 categories, we could end up saving 80 to 100 billion US. On the negative side, our exports will also degrow, and our remittances, which we get from our friends in the Gulf, mainly Indians who work in the Gulf, and they remit money, these will also go down. So our remittances, I think, I could be wrong here slightly, I think are about 60 billion US. They could go down 15-20%, and even our exports of 300 billion could degrow. Our exports degrowth should be relatively less, because if you look at the basket of Indian exports, it is basic goods. It is not consumer discretionary goods. We are not making cars or air conditioners or handsets and exporting them in large numbers. So net, I think India as a country stands to surprisingly benefit in the post-COVID world, at least in terms of its balance of payments. So I think our balance of payments will improve, and it is possible that India may achieve a current account, this year. Our trade deficit may be zero after almost 17-18 years. That is the extent of benefit what India is likely to get. So to summarize this section, as a country, while growth will slow down sharply in India for 1 year, and consumption will remain impacted for quite some time, I feel, as a country, in terms of balance of payments, I think we are extremely well placed and we are actually better off. This fall in the value of rupee is because the selling by FIIs in the last 1 month has been the highest ever selling in a single month by FIIs. We have seen close to $10 billion worth of selling in equities and a similar amount in bonds. And what you will gain in 6 months in terms of improved balance of payments, or over 1 year, we have lost in 1 month, and that is why the rupee has fallen. But you would have noticed the fall in the value of rupee is much lower. It is one of the lowest falls across all emerging markets. I think countries which are exporting oil or manufactured goods will be very, very badly hit. But India, as I said, is actually we are quite fortunate to be here at this point of time. There is one more very significant benefit that India will get from COVID, and we have discussed this in the past, and we have also included this in our annual calendar or yearbook. See, what was happening in last 10 years, China has grown very rapidly, and the wages in China are now 1.5 to 2 times of other Asian countries. So since Chinese costs were becoming higher, manufacturing was slowly moving out of China, and it was going to other Asian countries. To attract this investments, India had cut its tax rate about 2-3 quarters back for new manufacturing units to 15%, because India was not getting a fair share of these units that were relocating from China, because our tax rates were quite high, and that is why we had cut these tax rates. Now, what happened since COVID originated in China and it has been a severely impacted country? The multinationals of the world, the large companies of the world, they want to de-risk. There is a great sense of urgency in these companies to reduce their over-dependence on China and to diversify their manufacturing basis. Japan has given an incentive to its companies who have manufacturing facilities in China to relocate them back to Japan. So I think India, with its many advantages of low-cost manpower, large number of manpower available, rich natural resources, skilled manpower, large domestic market, and very low, very competitive tax rates, I think we stand to benefit a lot from this, but this benefit will play out over not 1 or 2 quarters, but over 2, 5, 10 years. But I think this is one lasting advantage of COVID, that the shift, what would have otherwise taken maybe 3-5 years, should now happen in 1 to 2 years. And this will give India a second chance to get back into manufacturing, and that criticism about India, that India missed the entire manufacturing cycle, it went straight from agriculture to services. I think we have a very good chance of making a comeback and earning our rightful place in the manufacturing segment of the economy as well. So net, I think while growth is definitely going to be severely impacted in the current year, the medium-term outlook for India, both on the external side and on the manufacturing export side, I think is one of great optimism. The fall in the shutdown in the economy for 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and the disruption in the economy will have a meaningful impact on the fiscal deficit of the government also. So you can imagine that for what will happen to GST revenues for the months of March, April and May, they will be severely impacted. If bonuses are cut, if wages are down, direct tax payments will be less. If companies, a retail company, if it loses 2 months of sale, it may lose 8 months of profits. So I am sure corporate tax collections will also take a hit. So I think the fiscal deficit, the impact on revenues could be quite meaningful. And I am not an expert economist, but my rough calculation suggests we could lose about 2% of GDP equivalent in terms of revenues. This is not a very serious thing in a year like this, where demand for money is extremely weak, where credit growth is extremely weak. Had this been a year of great economic activity, it could have been a challenge. But in a current year, I don't think it is a challenging situation. Because of lower oil prices, because of very weak demand conditions, I think despite the fiscal deficit increase, I think interest rates will be lower and they will continue to move lower. So I don't think there is any crowding out effect likely in the current year on this. There was a question around the stimulus package, and I think so far what the government has done is basically to support the lower income families. As I mentioned, they have low incomes, low wages and low savings. I think that has been done, and now there is an expectation that they will do some economic stimulus. I don't think it would be right for me to comment on this because it is very hard to second guess the government. I think we should wait for a week or two, and by then we will exactly know. But if they do something, then fiscal deficits will go up even further. But I don't think it should be a concern in the current year at all. So there was a question around impact of Indian economy of COVID. I have discussed that, and I have discussed current account deficit, fiscal deficit. I have discussed. Let me now move on to the impact of COVID on businesses and the profitability. And let me confine my comments to the large cap sectors. Let me look at Nifty and as a benchmark and take you through sectoral impact on profits, and both in terms of current year and next year, and then I will come and discuss what is the outlook of markets. There are a lot of questions where people are thinking this is a dead cat bounce. Why are markets bouncing back when first quarter is likely to be terrible for the economy and for the corporate profits? So I will come to that in a bit. So coming to the sectoral impact of COVID on the profits, and there are lots of questions around this. And I am deliberately not covering sectors outside the Nifty, but I will cover them in brief at the end. See, if you look at the Nifty, the largest weight is of the large banks in the Nifty. And large banks, I think, are in a strong position in this environment, because large banks will gain share from smaller banks. I explained that earlier because of what happened to US. They will gain share from NBFCs. We know the reasons. NBFCs are finding, many of them, not all of them, a reasonable number of them are finding it hard to grow. And large banks will also gain share from the bond markets. What has happened in India, as I mentioned earlier, FIs have sold almost 10 billion US worth of bonds also. Now, because of that, their bond prices have dropped, credit spreads have become wider, and some mutual funds have also taken some hits on the NAVs, and there is a general feeling of uncertainty in fixed income investors also. So I think mutual funds have also not been growing on the fixed income side. So RBI has come out with this LTRO scheme where they have given 1.5 lakh crores of money to banks at very low rates, with which banks are supposed to buy corporate bonds and bonds of NBFCs. So I think banks will therefore gain share, large banks from smaller banks, from NBFCs and from the bond market. So I think large banks should gain share, and they are reasonably well placed. Banks will, however, also have a challenge because of the slowdown. The small unsecured loans and the SME loans, there could be stress on asset quality, there could be higher NPAs, there could be higher provisioning costs. If you look at the composition of the large banks, the exposure to SME loans and to unsecured loans in most of the cases is in single digits, except in a case of one or two, but for most of the large banks, it is in single digits. So I think the impact, while it will be there, it will be quite manageable. The bigger impact of asset quality will be felt by smaller banks, and it will be felt by the NBFCs. And that is one reason you can see that a section of the small mid-cap companies will be more impacted. So current year profit growth will be weak in banks. In some banks, profits can also degrow. But I think the current year is an outlier year. And when a company is faced with a situation like this, you should not value that company by looking at the profits of that year. You can look at either March 20 profits or you can look at March 22 profits, because that is what will give you a right sense of the value of a business and how it is trading. So if you look at the large banks today, even in private sector, some good corporate banks are available around one-time book value for March 22. And in 6 months' time, maybe in 3 months' time, markets will start discounting March 22. So I think one-time price to book for some of these very large banks, which are household names, great liability franchise, large balance sheets, very competitive cost of funds. I think these are very good valuations. And around this time, let me also explain one question, that when the whole market knows that first quarter is going to be very bad, why is markets moving up? So it is the answer to that question is in the question itself. The whole market knows that, right? So the markets, it's the nature of the markets, they are forward looking, that when faced with an event like this, everyone is in a state of shock, there is forced selling, so markets typically overreact. But as time goes by, some investors start focusing on 6 months, 1 year, 2 years out, and that is how I think these markets are moving up. And we have seen this time and again that markets bottom out typically ahead of the worst results when those worst results are anticipated. If it comes as a surprise, as a shock, the results, then the markets may fall after results. But clearly, everyone knows the state of the economy. So I think markets by and large is quite prepared for a very weak first quarter. And that is why, despite that, the markets are moving up. By the way, markets are now in India at 50% market cap to GDP. They are very cheap. Only thrice in last 30 years, markets have traded at these levels. The valuations are so cheap now that last 10-year Nifty returns is only 7%. So that when 10-year Nifty returns are 7%, some people feel that equities are not a good asset class because even 10-year returns are 7%. But that's a wrong way to look at equities. The right way to look at equities is longer term equities give 12-14% return in line with our rupee GDP growth. But because of COVID, the markets have fallen so much that our market cap to GDP is near all-time lows, that our 10-year Nifty returns are 7%, and this will normalize. So whenever this normalizes, the returns have to make up for this gap of last 10 years, 12% GDP minus 7%, and plus the future GDP growth. So I think it is a very reasonable thing to say that if you take a few years view, medium to long-term view, the returns from this point onwards should be significantly higher than the nominal GDP growth of the country, which means, because in normal times, Indian markets trade 80 to 90% of GDP. So if 50 has to go to 80-90%, that's a 50 to 60% up move. Plus the GDP will start growing again from next year onwards around double digits. So that was on banking. So clearly, while there is some impact on current year, but the valuations are quite reasonable. In fact, some large public banks are now trading below 0.5 times price to book. Now, moving on to the second sector, that is IT services. IT services is a very competitive sector globally, and after COVID, the technology investments will increase, not reduce, because most companies will want to make their system such that people can work out of homes. They will want to automate their processes more. And one good thing in this post-COVID experience has been that none of the systems anywhere in the world have failed. So people have worked from homes, stock exchanges, banks, whatever you can think of has worked normally. So I think it's a great tribute to the Indian IT services companies, which must have played a very important role in managing these companies, their backends, their software, their hardwares in these times. So I think the credibility of Indian companies goes up, and over time, I think whenever their clients in US and Europe digest the 1 year loss of profits or whatever pain, I think technology spends will improve and these companies should come back on the growth path. But clearly, the current year is likely to see these companies have not given any guidance, but the analysts expect 0 to minus 10% growth in profits in the current year for this industry. But longer term, I don't think there is any challenge whatsoever for this industry. It should actually come out stronger. the rupee depreciation, the lower travel costs, the lower pressure on wages should all help maintain margins for these companies. But net, I think there is 1 year miss of growth for these companies. The next large sector is, so I've covered 35% banks and 10% IT. Moving on to the refining and marketing companies, basically companies like Reliance, HPCL, BPCL. So I think Reliance is actually part telecom and part refining and marketing. Telecom is doing extremely well. People are sitting at homes using a lot of bandwidth, and I think even going forward, we should see some improvement in telecom prices. So that part of Reliance is doing well. They've announced a transaction today with Facebook, 10% stake they've sold in Jio, and you can see the value at which it has come and how Reliance has done. So I think the refining margins could come under some pressure, though there is an expectation that in the near term they will go up because the crude markets are so oversupplied that Indian refiners are able to buy crude at a discount. Because India is a very large buyer, our refineries are very large. They are also able to process difficult crudes. So I think the impact near term on refining margins could be slightly positive, though there is a view that medium term there could be some impact on refining margins. Though on the flip side, the marketing margins have done extremely well because of the sharp fall in crude oil prices. Net, I think the impact on this sector is not likely to be meaningfully negative. And let us also not forget that the sharp depreciation in rupee is also a positive for this sector when you translate the dollar margins to rupee margins. Let me now come to the next sector, which is companies like Larsen & Toubro, engineering companies. I think companies which are whose business was more to do with industrial capex, their setting up of new plants or expansion, modernization. I think some of that capex will get pushed out because in the current year, companies' focus will be to cut costs, to conserve cash. So I think it is likely that new projects will get deferred by 6 months to a year. But the order backlogs of most large EPC companies in India like Larsen & Toubro are mainly from the infrastructure sector, and these companies have 3 to 4 year order backlogs. So I don't think much will change in that space. For 2 months, of course, you have not executed the projects, so there will be loss of turnover in the current year. But over time, the order backlog has to be executed. So I think current year you will see 10-15% impact on profits, but by next year you should come back to nearly normal operating conditions. If at all the government comes out with a fiscal stimulus focusing on increasing infrastructure spend to generate employment, to kickstart the economy, to increase the consumption of cement, steel, paints, sand, so many things, I think it will be positive for that sector. And after the sharp fall, the sector is now trading in single-digit multiples, and these are close to lifetime low multiples for this sector. The next two sectors are pharmaceuticals and cement. There will be minimal impact on these sectors, while growth will be a little weak this year because of 1 month of some loss of business, certainly for cement. And it is possible cement volumes may degrow 10-15% in the current year, maybe even higher. But cement companies are typically valued on asset prices. And 1 year loss of profitability, I don't think will have a meaningful impact on valuations. In any case, market already knows that current year profits will be quite weak. But cement is a asset-rich business, and typically these companies trade around replacement costs. So I don't think there is much impact, and in any case, we have seen some correction in the prices. And today the valuations are such that some of the best-known cement companies in the country, the largest, are now trading below replacement costs, and I don't think this situation will sustain for long. The two more sectors are telecom and utilities. Telecom, as I mentioned, it is one of the few sectors that will benefit. The next sector is utilities. This sector again, while for 1 month or 6 weeks power demand is down 20-30% because plants are not working, but when lockdown lifts, I think the sector will come back to near normal conditions, and the impact of COVID on this sector after telecom is actually the lowest. It will hardly be felt. The sectors which I have left out for the end are basically now FMCG and automobiles. I think these are sectors that will face considerable impact in the current year, especially the automobile sector, and people will not replace their automobiles, they will not buy new vehicles. So I think this sector could see the maximum impact on volumes, and this sector has very high operating leverage. So if volumes drop 20%, your profits can drop anywhere between 30, 40 to 60, 70%. So I think this is one sector where the outlook is not clear and the impact of COVID will clearly be very significant. I think there will be some impact of COVID even on FMCG companies. While the general perception is that these companies are selling basic goods, but the definition of a basic necessity is not uniform across income levels. For someone, buying a cream biscuit is small money, but for a lower income group person, buying an expensive shampoo or a tin of soup or expensive chocolate or a cream biscuit, these can be luxuries. And therefore, I think given the low income levels in India, I think, and the likely adverse impact of wages being impacted in the lower income households, I think the impact of demand will be felt to reasonable extent even by the FMCG companies. So these are two sectors where I think the impact on earnings is going to be pretty reasonable. Now, the sectors what I have left out, some of the small sectors are auto ancillaries, white good companies, brown good companies, small banks, NBFCs, etc. I think you can imagine when the automobile companies are not doing well, there will be pressure on auto ancillaries. If cars are not selling, there will be some impact on sale of even white goods and brown goods, household improvement products, paint companies, they will see significant adverse impact. So I think mid-caps in general, I feel, in general, if you look at 100, 200 mid-caps, the way sectors are distributed between large caps and mid caps, I think mid caps have a higher proportion of small banks, NBFCs, white goods, brown good companies, home improvement companies, painting companies, and your one more auto ancillaries. So I think these sectors would see considerable impact, and it will be more than the large cap companies. And therefore, there are a lot of questions around which funds to focus on. To my mind, we should focus on diversified equity large cap funds because they will be the first to recover. And let us see the earnings impact. How long does it take for the consumption demand to come back? And also what happens in falls like these, most of the selling takes place in the large caps because they are the ones which are liquid, and the selling in small mid caps, if someone wants to sell, takes a bit longer. So I think, and going by past experience also, large caps would be better in this environment. They are less risky and they should be the first ones to bounce back. There are a few questions around which sector funds to buy. I would say that generally please avoid sector funds. The experience with sector funds has not been good, including our sector funds of housing and infra. So I think we should all learn from that experience. We should focus more on large cap, multi-cap, equity funds. And what sectors, I think in these markets, when the whole markets are trading at 50% market cap to GDP, the whole markets are very cheap. But what is still expensive compared to the past multiples and compared to the earnings impact which we will see, I think are basically automobile companies and FMCG companies. Other than this, I feel most of the other sectors are undervalued or deeply undervalued. Let me now move on to what should investors do and what should be the right strategy to invest. There are few questions around that someone has invested in a fund at an NAV of 500 and now it is 350. Someone has said, I have invested 3 years back, 5 years back, the returns are quite low. Should one lose faith in equities? And even in some income funds, the returns have been low. And so there are a few questions around the long-term underperformance or low returns, single-digit returns. If you are holding equity funds for even 10 years now, the returns are in single digits. So I think these are very correct observations, but from the same observation, we can look at the same observation in two ways. And this I have covered earlier also, but this is very important. So let me repeat this. See, if your 10-year returns of Nifty is 7%, what does it tell us? Our GDP growth in last 10 years is between 12 to 14% in rupee terms, but Nifty has grown at 7%. So it means Nifty is much cheap compared to relative to the economy, and that is showing up in the market cap to GDP. So some people may think that for 10 years equities have delivered low returns, so it is not a good asset class. I think that is wrong. Whenever such a situation happens, whenever the last 10-year returns of Nifty are very low, and similar situation happened in 2002 and it happened in 2008 after Lehman, if you had invested on both these occasions, the returns over the next 3, 5, 10 years were very handsome. They were the best times to invest. So I think the best returns in equities are made in investments made in very difficult times, and COVID has presented us with very difficult economic environment, but a great environment for someone who has surplus liquidity. So my advice to you is very simple. This is not the time to think 3 months. This is not the time to be fearful on equities. You get opportunities like this 3, 4 times in a lifetime. Once was in 2001, second was in 2008, and this is the third opportunity in last 30 years. We should not miss on this opportunity, and whatever is that portion of our surplus capital, we should invest that in 2 or 3 rounds. 1 round we should invest now. 1 round we can invest after 2-3 weeks. Once as a country we start winning the war against COVID, when this curve begins to flatten, when lockdown is being lifted and life is slowly coming back to normalcy. Because why I'm saying that is, there is a very small chance that it may take us a bit longer to control COVID. So in that event, the economy may be disrupted for a bit longer. I don't think that is happening, but just to de-risk, I think 1 portion we can invest in 2-3 weeks. The last portion, if someone wants to be really conservative, you can keep it after the results for the first quarter are out, which means you can invest the last portion in after June, in around July or so. My experience says that markets bottom out ahead of the worst results. And this quarter results will actually not matter, at least in the large cap companies, unless there are some shocks somewhere. Therefore, but if still someone wants to be a little conservative, I think you can split this investment, keep it 1 portion for even after June, by the time this first quarter results are known. So I think net, this is not at all a right time to reduce exposure to equities. This would also be a good time for those who don't need dividends to move from dividend plans to growth plans, because dividend plan at this juncture means that you are reducing your exposure to equities. I don't think this would be the right thing. But if someone needs dividends, please stay in those plans as you desire. There was a question Will HDFC Balance Advantage Fund stop giving monthly dividend? Look, I can't tell you about the future, but you know our track record of 20 years, and you will get the answer for this month in few days. And I think our intent would be to maintain the consistency of dividends. That is always our endeavor, but we also have to be mindful of the fall in NAV, and it has been our endeavor to maintain a reasonably consistent yield. So I think the trustees will decide, but I remain optimistic that this should continue. There are several questions around will there be a second crash in the market, and people are saying US markets have gone up, Indian markets are bouncing back, people are surprised by this. See, this is what is surprising in equities. They don't try to look at equity markets by reading the headlines, and that is where most people make mistakes. Please appreciate, our economy will not grow in the current year, but our markets are down 30%. So what does that mean? That markets have fallen much more than the longer term damage to the economy or the longer term impact on profits. So that is why our market cap to GDP is 50%. Only thrice in last 30 years, markets has traded at levels lower than that. So I don't know whether markets can fall again. That no one knows. And that is one clear learning of this, what has happened, that equities are an asset class which are very hard to forecast in any case. And once in a while, they can even shock us, like what has happened with this once in a lifetime kind of happening. And that is why I said, because we don't know the short term, but since markets are extremely attractive from a medium to longer term perspective, that is why I said whatever is the portion of our surplus money which we can tolerate volatility on, which we don't need for a few years, we should invest in 2 or 3 rounds. This is not the time to take 1 year to invest. If you are doing SIPs, if it is possible, you should double your SIPs. It would be a very good opportunity, but it would be great if you can use this sharp correction to invest something extra over and above the SIPs. And I think the best way to do that would be to invest in 2 or 3 rounds. There are quite a few questions. So there is a question of when can we expect stability in the market? I think is there a possibility of extreme crash? See, I think extreme crash from these levels looks very unlikely, though I must say no one really knows the future, and that is why we always say invest only that portion of wealth which we can spare for 3-5 years, and that is why I said invest in 2 or 3 rounds. But what has happened in the market is that if you look at the FII behavior over last 25 to 30 years that they have been investing, the month of March has seen the highest ever selling by FIIs in a single month, and that is why the markets fell so sharply. So I think FIIs have sold because many emerging markets will experience deep pain. If you are an oil exporting country, if you are a country exporting manufacturing goods for the world, you will have deep pain. I think India will come out of it very fast. But when there is so much redemptions in emerging market funds, India has also got its share of sales, and that is why the markets have fallen. I think we should take advantage of that. And if you go back and see over last 20 years, after 9/11, after Lehman, after tapering, after Asian crisis, FIIs sold heavily, and these have provided great entry points to an investor who can think beyond 1-2 months and who can think few years ahead. There are so I have answered most of these questions around SIPs, how to invest, sectors I have answered, right time to invest. I think there are few questions. How long will it take for mutual funds to go back to the pre-COVID NAVs? I think I would say, this is very hard to forecast. In a way, I have answered that over the next few years, I would expect the markets to deliver returns which are meaningfully higher than the nominal GDP growth of the country. Indian market should not stay at 50% market cap to GDP. We should go back to 70, 80, 90%, which means those markets are up 30, 40, 50% from here, plus GDP should grow. So I would suspect that in the medium term, we should be able to not just go to pre-COVID levels, but over time we should be able to move much beyond that. I still remember, and my numbers could be wrong, you should check the exact numbers. I think pre-Lehman, and maybe if Ashok remembers, he could correct me. I think pre-Lehman, the NAV of HDFC Equity Fund was 220 or something. I think it fell to 80 rupees, thereabouts. And pre-COVID, I think it had moved up a few months back or few quarters back to all the way to 700 rupees. So you can see how over a 10-year period, when in Lehman 200 became less than 100, it moved at a peak to 700, and of course now it would be down 25-30%. So over time you can see there are many funds in India where starting NAVs of 10 have become 300, 500, 700. So I think this 30% fall, while it looks very large in a 2-month, 3-month period, but if you go back and look at the history of mutual fund NAVs, you will find that there are 2 or 3 occasions where we have experienced similar volatility, but over time the NAVs have gone higher than the peak NAVs before those falls. So I think there are a few questions that loss of faith in mutual funds. It is quite natural for that to happen around times like these, when your 5-year, 3-year, certainly 1 and 3-year returns are looking extremely low. But believe me, these are the best times to invest in equities, and that is what Mr. Buffett has said time and again. When others are fearful, become greedy. And the best returns are made in the most difficult times. If you invested around 9/11, Lehman, you know what returns have come. So I think the very low returns of the past over longer periods are telling us that the markets are very cheap. They should catch up. So we should not get disappointed by looking at the past returns. This is not the time to extrapolate the past low returns into the future. This is the time to believe that there will be a mean reversion, and longer term these markets have to do better. If you go back and see the 10-year returns of markets in 2001 or 2, they were negative. In 1992 the index was 4200, and I think in 2000 it fell below 3000. So your 10-year returns were negative. And people used to ask me, equities are a bad asset class, 10-year returns are negative, why should we invest? And my answer was this: look, this low returns of last 10 years are telling you how undervalued the markets are, and returns should catch up into the future. Let me just run through the questions. We have completed 1 hour. And
Prashant, only one question you can take. How much to invest in large cap and small cap, mid cap as a proportion from asset allocation?
So Ashok, I have answered that in a way that I think at this point of time, I would say bulk of your investment should be in large cap, multi-cap funds. You could invest 10, 20, 30% in small caps or mid caps also. Ashok, you think anything else is left? You also have the list.
No, I think we have covered. This was the only question that came to my mind. Otherwise, I think we have covered everything.
I have covered sectors, I have covered SIPs, I have covered this. So to conclude, let me say that while COVID is definitely a once in 20 or 50 or 100 year event, I do feel very optimistic and confident that 6 months from today, 1 year from today, we will not see headlines around COVID, and I think the world will change, but it will change for good, and most of the difficult changes in families, in countries, in businesses are made in times like these. So I am pretty confident that some good will come out of this as well, both in our personal lifestyles, in the better efficiencies in the companies. And I think it is one great opportunity for investors to take advantage of, and I am sure investments made around these times will yield you returns higher than your expectations over medium to long term. So thank you very much for your very patient hearing. I have answered most of the questions, and if anything is left, Ashok will come back to me and we will try and give you a written reply to that. So thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Prashant. Friends, recently Prashant wrote an article in Times of India saying virus will pass, so will be opportunity. So the underlying theme of today's call was that only, that of course markets have corrected significantly, but also has presented to us, to the patient investor, opportunities for medium to long-term investing. We covered in last 1 hour economy, markets, asset allocation, sector allocations, everything that he has experience of last over 25 years that he gave to us. Thanks to Prashant lot, and thanks Geojit team for organizing this call. I'm sure this call would have added value to your customers and would help them take a balanced view in these trying times. So with this,
Ashok, just one question I noticed, it has been left out. There is a question that what is the strategy one should follow to create a corpus of 2 crores by 2035? And I've done some working, and this could be wrong. You can check it, and Ashok, you can check it and go back with exact numbers. But I think if one invests, I think 5 lakhs per year, or roughly 40,000 per month, with a 12% return, which I think is quite realistic, your corpus will cross 2 crores in the year 2035. Ashok, that was it.
And one more analysis that we did, that of course markets are at 30,000, nearly around 30,000, and just in January it was 42,000. So what if market goes back to 42,000? We have done some simulation for last 1 year, for next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Even if it becomes 42,000 in next 4 years, which is a very outside chance that we can think of, your return will be still around 8% on a CAGR basis, which is still higher than today a bank FD is offering to you. So now it is for you to think whether investing at 32,000, has the market chance of going back to 42,000 in next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? I have given you the outermost side of 4 years. Suppose it goes back in next 1 year, what could be a return? Because we have seen that after every crisis, market recovers and mutual fund entities recover and people make money. So what has happened in past cannot be undone, but what we can take a look from here for next 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and just make a simple calculation that from 30,000 if market becomes 42,000 in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, what can be your return in percentage terms? Whether that kind of return will be offered by, say, a bank FD or a company deposits, and compare with the taxation, I think the answer will come out to you in a very clear-cut term. So with this, we will end this call. Thanks, Prashant, once again, and thanks, Geojit, Ranjit, Satish, everybody on the call, and stay home, stay safe. Thank you once again.